Thank you. Hello. That's fine. No, take a seat. Take a seat. Now, I've got no idea who this guy is. Well, welcome to what I hope is going to be a fantastic reunion of the Thunderbirds voice artists. It's a real privilege of me to host this item for you, actually, and I'm looking forward to it enormously. So just like the cast list, at the end of each episode, I'm going to introduce everybody in alphabetical order. One of them's already appeared. Please welcome the voice of Parker, David Graham. Now, I say he's the voice of Parker. I mean, in my house, he's actually much better known as the voice of Grandpa Pig. Actually, because Peppa Pig looms large with my children. Next up, please welcome the voice of Scott Tracy, Shane Rimmer.
Just the way to the washroom, we didn't do this. No. Sit down.
Welcome to the stage.
Huh?
Next up, the voice of Virgil Tracy, Jeremy Wilkens. And last but by no means least, the voice of that cheeky young upstart, Alan Tracy. Please welcome Matt Zimmerman.
Brought my own chair. There's a chair there.
You can't get the stuff, can you?
Which one's with it?
Well, that's
Very
blowing
good.
the budget, isn't it? That's blowing the budget.
Thank you for that, by the way. Whatever that was. For the other fella.
Well, welcome everyone. Welcome back to Tracy Island after 50 years. Although, dare I say, you've never actually been away, have you? I think.
No.
I think.
We've been lurking.
Well, I'd like to start off by talking to all of you. A question for all of you about the actual recording process for Thunderbirds. Shane, what do you remember, first of all, about the very first day, the first recording session?
You had to learn to shout very loudly to it. No, you naturally go, usually when you have a gang, a bunch, several people recording the same show, they have different cubicles that they go into so that it retains the fidelity of what everybody's doing. Jerry wouldn't have that. He said, look, you're an armed force, you're going to collect somebody, and you've got to all be together on this. Don't separate. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much. And so we gathered around this one central microphone. The only difficulty was getting out of the way of it for the next person to come in and take his place by the microphone. We had so many collisions. You thought it was the England, what do you call it? England-Italy football, rugby game. Yeah. Anyway, that's the way it was. We just had to be very light-footed on the whole thing and, get out of the way and get into the way.
We had 3 mics.
Well, we had one central one to begin with.
We had 3 mics.
Are you arguing
Good
with
morning,
me?
yeah. We had 3 microphones.
Well, that's it. It's very nice seeing you. I would.
I think you're talking about another episode.
Am I?
I don't know. I've been with them for 50 years.
Did any of you have to learn your lines or not?
No.
You didn't. Did you even read your scripts, presumably, before you?
Yeah, we always got scripts in advance.
And so how would you prepare with a script if you weren't learning the lines?
Well, I mean, we knew our characters, and then I was doing Brains and Kirano and Gordon, and sometimes I would do various guest characters. You just read your script like you were preparing a part in a radio play. And that's how we performed it, as if we were doing a radio play. And we went down on a Sunday, and I think it was 3 scripts in a day.
That's right, absolutely.
10 quid a script, I think it was.
I think you're quite
Fortunately,
close
I had to
to
go
that,
offshore and invest. So that's what we did.
I watched a
it as a radio.
documentary about the Archers the other day.
Yeah.
And one of the cast of the Archers was complaining about the paper that radio scripts are printed
Well.
on these days, because apparently the paper makes more noise than it used to in the old days. You used to use very sort of thick blotting paper.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Because presumably you'd have to, given that you haven't learned the lines, you presumably have to...
Yeah, I know, you had to be very
Oh,
quiet.
no, it had to be loose. So what it was like a ballet. So you read your script, and because it made noise, when you finished reading it, you had to go. Like that. And then you have to go back, you have to go back, and you go, say, oh, wait a minute, then tell me one of these.
Right. Clear. So who directed the recording sessions? Would it have been the director of that particular episode?
Oh,
No, it's
Sylvia.
Jerry and
Oh,
Sylvia.
look, David, look. Behind you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God.
That was David Graham once.
That's how I remember you.
Yeah, that was Four Feather Falls.
Yeah.
I used to do Gramps in that.
It was Sylvia who directed us in the studio with Jerry
Oh.
in the engineering booth. And presumably he used to say things every once in a while. I always see him with a cigar, but that's beside the point. And but Sylvia would hand out, we would go through the script, and she'd say, David, would you play that character? And would you play the voice for that?
Oh, so Sylvia effectively cast it.
No, I don't know whether...
Well, I mean, obviously, I'm sure
I don't
Jerry
know
and
whether
Sylvia
that was
cast it together.
told later
But
night
she
in
would
bed, I
cast
don't
the characters according to who was in the room. Yeah, she would
Yeah.
distribute the characters.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there was only 8 of us in the room.
Yeah.
There was only 8.
Except Shane, you never played any secondary character, not in Thunderbirds, did you? You were
I've been playing a secondary character all my life.
Oh, come along.
No, well, I think Jerry wanted that.
Oh, there you are in Coronation Street. Sorry to keep interrupting.
That's all right. I'm used to that. So, and Jerry, I think, wanted to keep the Scott Tracy voice independent of the others. I don't know. Well, it wasn't because it was exceptional or anything else, but I think that was the reason behind my non-selection. That he just wanted to keep the voice there and not aligned to do anything else. That's what I tell myself.
Because you played other characters in subsequent series, didn't you?
Yes.
Lots of different voices.
Yeah, I found a great delight in it. I don't know how David remembered all the different innuendos and the the styles that everybody, because everybody's got a different style, don't they?
I don't think Peter Dineley ever played other voices. Did he?
No, he didn't.
No.
No, he didn't.
So Sylvia would be directing you, even though she was also a member of the cast
No, yes.
Well,
yes.
as well.
Well, I think Jerry had some input.
Well,
as
Jerry obviously had input. I mean, I don't know what went on
Yeah.
before they got the script, because they had a talk. And occasionally he would buzz through and they would talk, and then she would say something like, Matt, you're talking too fast or whatever. I don't know, something.
Oh, David, get out.
David, get out.
Like
It was never fretful. It was a lovely time. There was never any argument. We laughed a lot.
Well, it was fretful once for Shane, I think, wasn't it? Because Shane, weren't you? You got in trouble with Jerry once, didn't you, during a recording of Thunderbirds?
Was I in trouble with Jerry? I didn't dare get in trouble with Jerry. Next thing I know, we'll be on the Archers.
Perish the thoughts.
Got in trouble with David.
Maybe it was David.
No,
He's always getting in trouble.
I know. I've told you that.
No, I remember once you telling me, Shane, that Jerry said you weren't taking it quite seriously enough.
Did he say
And
that?
that you were dropped from one episode, then you had to come back and re-record it because you were giggling too much or something. Jerry, was Jerry an earnest character in your estimation? Really?
He was more shy than earnest. I mean, he was serious. I think. He was serious, Jerry, and reserved
Oh, yes.
as a chap, but
Well, he was a
a
genius.
genius in what he did.
That's right.
Jeremy, what do you remember of Jerry as a person?
Well,
Not very much. I didn't feel I really knew him.
Right.
you know, but I came in late in the game because I was only in the last 6 episodes when I took over from David Holliday.
Yes, but you did subsequent series for him as well, didn't you?
Did what?
You did subsequent series for him.
Yes, I did.
Well.
Lots.
Yes, you did lots of voice work for him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you think, in your estimation, he was shy more than...
I think he was very taciturn, very quiet.
Yeah.
He was what?
Taciturn, it's an English word. It
Doesn't sound like an English word.
Canadian word. It's an English word.
So how about Sylvia's personality in comparison?
She was very helpful.
Right.
Well, sometimes if Jerry said something rather blunt, and he was very direct when he gave you directions, you know, he didn't mince his words at all. She would soften it down a little bit.
Right.
So that people weren't a little bit upset by, well, God, he's mad at me.
Right.
You know, but he wasn't mad at all, but he was just very much focused on getting it right. And she was a kind of pacifier that actually made what he said sound gentler than it was, because he was direct and to the point, wasn't he?
God, you got out of that one well, didn't you?
That's why I passed it on to you.
I think Jerry spent much more time, because he was sort of quiet. He was thinking all the time. I think Jerry was thinking, even when we were recording, of what it was going to look like and what the ships were going to do and what there was. He was so technically minded about the different things.
That could be, yeah, that's right.
And he was much more, whereas Sylvia was much more just into the script, basically, you know. And
well, she was a continuity girl, wasn't she, at one time?
Was she?
I believe so. When they first got together, he was an editor and she was
I thought she was a PA when then there's a PA.
I believe she
Well,
was.
she did actually. Actually, you're both right. She did start off as a PA.
We can't be both right.
I can never be both right with him. That's it.
No. Both right.
I'm not sure they used the phrase PA in the 50s, did they? She was a secretary, wasn't she? I think that was what she was originally.
Now the story's getting lurid.
Very attractive.
I think, yes. Jerry certainly thought so.
Yes, sir.
Now, your supervising sound editor, who I believe was at these recording sessions, was a chap called John Peverill. Does anybody remember him?
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, was he present at all the recordings as well?
I don't remember him.
I remember the top of his head, because he was behind that glass thing with all the
There were wires sticking out of his top.
Jerry standing there, Jerry standing over here, and there was his head. That's what I remember.
Right.
Now do you remember?
Of course. But he was the head sound man, I'm pretty sure he was. He
Yes,
picked me up
that's
from...
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how I got to Jerry's house. I didn't know where it was, what county it was in, or anything else. And he drove up in this huge sort of gabled country home. God, it was glorious. And they were just building the sound stage, or sound studio, when I got there.
For what?
For the audition for Thunderbirds, which I had yet to find out about.
And this was at his home.
Yeah.
I never knew.
They gave you sheets of script to read. No. What's the matter?
No, that's all right.
Tell me if he's saying anything.
What about the place in Slough?
Hey?
I thought that's where we...
Gerard's Cross.
Eh?
Yeah, that's where his home was.
Well, so Shane, you actually auditioned in Jerry and Sylvia's house?
Yeah, I got a call. I mean, Jerry had heard my voice and thought it would fit Scott, but did they always have to get a sort of a final okay on this sort of thing? So I went up, but there was no name on the script, no name as to what the script applied to. And so I walked out of the place as ignorant of the thing as when I walked in. Did you know what you were adjudicating for? I mean, reading for?
Adjudicating.
Well, I'd done 4 series for Jerry before Thunderbirds,
God.
so I
Yeah.
he just cast me.
Exactly.
I was
Exactly.
lucky enough to be cast.
Yes.
And you were also in Jerry's film, weren't you? Crossroads to Crime.
Yes, there's a story about that.
Oh, go on.
It was. If I say it was low budget, you couldn't get any lower budget than this film.
It cost £16,000 to be precise.
Well, that's double what I thought. Anyway, I finally got to see it in a cinema in Kilburn, where it was a second feature. And when I got up to go, there was a couple sitting behind me, and the bloke said, "What a fucking awful film." It wasn't very good. I'm afraid it wasn't very good. No reflection on Jerry.
No.
But
I think some of it has to reflect on Jerry, certainly, because he was a director. Wasn't he?
Yeah.
But I do think that, speaking as a fan, we should. Has everybody here seen Crossroads to Crime? Yeah. I think we should all be grateful. For
perhaps I'm being unfair to it, but
no, I don't think you are. It's a wretched film. But however, had it been a fabulous success, then he would never have got into puppets, would he? Afterwards, he'd never have stayed with puppets, because had it been a fabulous success, he'd have been a live-action director. We would never have had Thunderbirds, would we?
He hated puppets. He hated puppets.
I know he did.
yeah, but that was the right thing for Jerry to do. He was just a master.
But do you think he ever accepted that?
Well, he might not have done, but I don't think he was an actor's director, visual actor's director. He was just a genius in creating these fantastic technological wonders.
Yeah, quite right.
Now, there are a number of instances in Thunderbirds and the other shows where the characters, where some of the voice artists, you had to have a conversation with yourself.
That's right.
Now, this didn't apply to you, Shane, because you were only playing Scott, but...
I do enough of that when I'm out walking around the sun.
But, I remember one episode specifically, David, it's called Vault of Death, where you play Parker, and you also play Light-Fingered Frank.
Yes.
Who's one of, and you are, in fact, here it is on the screen right now, behind us.
Oh yeah, lovely.
There you are. You're actually voicing both of those characters.
That's right.
At the same time. Now, would that have been edited by John Peveril, or would you just have done it?
Yes, that's right.
No, he probably would have edited it if I'd have been overlapping. But that wasn't the only episode in which I played more, like Parker talking to Brains or Kirano talking to Parker. I just pause slightly between lines, so that it made it easier not to overlap, That would have caused a problem. And, after all the work I'd done for Jerry, I was quite proficient at switching from one character, one voice to another.
In real time?
In real time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Can I ask you a question? What's wrong with your foot?
Yes.
That looks very, very weird.
Well, I think he was partly pigeon-toed. Light-fingered Fred.
Interesting that way. Yeah. It's going to hold your
Nice
foot
character.
this
It's a nice duo.
And one of so many characters who's permanently got a cigarette hanging up.
Yeah, well, they smoked like chimneys in the old days. I mean, in Lady Penelope's house, if you saw them in the kitchen or below stairs, they were all puffing like chimneys. You could never do that today.
Well, I think it's a sad thing, actually, because somebody suggested to me that this is one of the reasons why we don't see the classic Thunderbirds on television now. It's because so many characters do smoke, and we're now so self-conscious of that.
Well, when I was young, everybody smoked. The first thing you did when you met somebody, you said,
But they make
packet of fags. But I never ever smoked. I didn't like it.
They make series like Mad Men where people are smoking all over the place. That's okay.
It's a period piece, though, isn't it?
It's a what?
It's a period piece. It's set in the 60s, isn't it?
Yeah, so in other words, if we said something in the 60s, you can smoke like crazy on screen.
Yeah, can't do it now.
Whoa!
Can't do it now.
No.
Were any of you self-conscious, or even, dare I say, embarrassed about the fact that you were earning your livings from making puppet series?
No.
Because, I mean, Matt mentioned earlier that Jerry had a dislike of the puppets, and Jerry was, certainly during the 1960s, he told me that if he was in polite company or meeting meeting friends in the film industry, and they asked him what he did, he would go, "Well, I made progress," like that. I mean, I think later in life, when he realised how that these series were adored by so many people,
Yeah,
I think he changed his view. But
I think if something is being done successfully, and it has drawn the kind of audience that Thunderbirds eventually drew, you don't apologize to anybody for anything. He might have aspired to, higher office, because out at that sort of area, Pinewood was the kingdom. A lot of big things were going on. I remember Pinewood as being the busiest studio anywhere. I mean, they were pouring out, and there was good stuff. They made a lot of good quality stuff. Every good actor was being used an awful lot. And so maybe he wanted to get some of that action, I don't know.
Well, that's where he wanted to be, wasn't it?
Yes.
I think it was only maybe in the 1980s that he actually realised that, I think maybe that late, that he realised that he'd actually made his name from doing something that was unique.
That is fortunate.
I think a lot of us had other jobs that we went to and were busy and working.
Now for you, this was principally the West End, wasn't it?
Well, yeah. Oh no, I was already in the West End before I did that. No, that was not a problem. But it's because we all went on and did other work, and then suddenly it was coming to the fore all the time. The magazines wanted to know about it, and so it wasn't until a long time into the 70s where you really sort of said, "My God." And when the residuals started coming in from all over the world,
That was
okay. Well, let's talk about that. You mentioned earlier that you got £10 an episode, but you also
something about that, and £10 for exploitation, which sort of,
and we were the ones being exploited.
So we did 3 scripts in a day and 60 quid. It was a fortune in those days.
And so, dare I ask this question? Are you all still earning from Thunderbirds?
yes.
Yes.
Yep.
But you see, equity has
Jane didn't
stepped
say anything.
in. Equity has stepped in a couple of times, and the fee has gone up.
Yes.
It isn't on 24.
Well, actually, I believe you stepped in, didn't you?
Yes, Shane and I did.
Tell us about that.
Well, that was basically, do you remember that we were going to hire a solicitor?
Yeah, we did.
We hired a lawyer, and we were going to not only sue the company,
£20
but
a week
sue
we hired a
equity
lawyer.
as well. And equity backed down and upped it up. Then there was another
Why
time.
were equity fighting it? Surely they should have been looking after you.
No, they were on our side.
Well, no, that was the problem, you see. We didn't feel there was the right amount. I mean, equity. And so therefore we had to do something about it. So we went to them, and they didn't want to up it anymore.
Presumably it was ITC or ITV.
That's right. That's right.
Okay. Right.
And also, not only that, it was also Polydor was involved.
That's right. Yeah.
Polygram.
Poly what?
Polygram.
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 Who owned it in the 1970s.
And we had to take them to step as well. We had a big meeting. I know where it ended up. We got about 35,000, 40,000 pounds in our pockets, if I remember.
We did very, very well.
Yes, because they were not giving us the residuals coming in. And I remember having the meeting, and a lovely woman called Lynn something, I can't remember her last name. She kept saying, "All right, we'll give you so much," and she kept standing up and kept saying, "Sit down. We're not finished here." There were the repeats in that, and the repeats on television, and they kept trying to leave, and I kept saying, "Sit down."
And did this situation arise because you were working for ITV? I mean, would it have been different had this been a BBC programme? Do you think?
Oh, yes, I think so. BBC have got a rule. They say things like, "Well, man only gets so much money because that's what he's set at." And so you don't have to argue to get it up to another level. There were different levels of payment.
Right.
BBC are very good at repeats, getting the repeats out.
Yeah, they are.
Absolutely excellent.
Well, I don't think any single person in this room would begrudge you any of those royalties. No. I think.
Well, Jerry always said it would be our pension, so there we are.
Quite right too.
It made a big difference.
The times I phoned, now they're in Manchester. I mean, just recently I heard a rumor. I'm a CPA as well as an actor, you see.
Sorry,
I heard a rumor,
A CBA chartered accountant.
certified.
That doesn't add up.
Doesn't So I found him up in Manchester and said, I've heard a rumor that because ITV are doing this new series, which I'm also done a series.
Yes, well, we'll come to that.
They're not going to sell Thunderbirds.
Oh, is that true?
That's what. Oh no.
Oh, good.
Well, I said, unfortunately, it must be happening because I've not had any residuals lately at all.
Right.
Suddenly, a nice check came in, did it not?
It did.
Thank you.
But I can remember, because we had resisted some of the ITV and the big company, what do they call them? There's structures that you get paid. And we defied them, didn't we?
Yeah.
And I remember walking home and looking back over my shoulder sometimes, wondering if a secret operative from ITV was following us, and then we're going to report us.
It was just your probation officer.
You'll never work in this town again.
Well, we are thrilled to have so many of you together today, but I'd like to spend a few moments remembering some of the actors who sadly aren't here this afternoon. The first voice we hear when we watch an episode of Thunderbirds belongs to the late, great Peter Dinelli.
Dinelli.
Dinelli. I do apologise.
That's all right.
Does anybody have any special memories of Peter?
Well, I mean, he just created this unique voice which started the whole shebang off.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just wonderful voice. Very nice man. Died far too young, sadly. Shame.
And you're right, it was in fact so unique. He was literally irreplaceable, wasn't he?
Irreplaceable.
Because we hear his voice in the new series as well, don't we?
No, it was a unique voice.
He was lovely. He had a very wonderful wife called Jane Hilton as well, who was a very famous actress.
You were.
She used to sometimes come down with him. I thought she was great. And Peter was wonderful. He had a very dry sense of humor. And occasionally he used to drive a little red sports car. And occasionally he used to drive me down to Slough in this where I was crazy about this sports car. Absolutely crazy about it. So much so that I have one at the moment. It's my second car, which is a Mazda Mark V.
I think it's your third car, wasn't it?
It's not red, it's silver, but I call it Peter. Yes. It's nice. He was wonderful. I adored him.
And there he is on the screen now between us.
I adored him.
Yeah, lovely.
That's a picture of Peter, I think, in a series called Ghost Squad, I think.
What a rogue.
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah.
Nice man.
No.
Now, as well as being the patriarch of the Tracy family, was he, I guess, one of the older members of the cast at the time? Was he a patriarch amongst the voice cast as well?
I don't know.
I don't think he ever did that.
No.
No, I think
He was older than you
He
guys.
was older.
Oh, yeah,
he was
he'd
slightly
been in the war.
older than
Oh, really?
He was, I think he was in the Air Force.
Yeah.
And I think that's how he got to Canada.
Right.
He went to Canada?
Yeah, he was in Canada.
Everybody
for a
went
while.
to Canada.
We
came here.
But you would have came from America, it doesn't say.
I don't understand it.
Now, dare I say it, at the time, in the mid-1960s, the best-known actor, I think, probably, in the voice cast, was probably Ray Barrett.
Yes.
Because he was starring in feature films for Hammer, and he was in a big show called Mogul.
That's right.
And Troubleshooters.
Yeah,
And so I think, would you say he was the best-known name
Yes,
at that time?
Yeah, probably. He used to live next door to me.
Next door?
Yeah, and I used to, as I was being unemployed in my room, I used to see him going out to his car carrying loads of scripts.
Oh, dear.
He was very jealous. But there's a wonderful story. He was a very keen golfer. And a member of the stage golfing. And I remember once going round the golf course with him. And he did like a tipple. He did like a drink. So I was sitting at home one evening and the phone rang and the voice said, this is Richmond Police Station here. Is that David Graham? Yes. He said, I've got Mr. Ray Barrett here. He says you're his lawyer. Absolutely true. And I said, I think he'd have been at the 19th hole. And I said, no, I'm a fellow actor, I'm a neighbour. And there was a sort of pause. He said, oh, sorry to trouble you. Goodbye. So I think he'd been caught, I don't know, with too much swilling around inside him. It's a lovely story. Don't often tell it. Now he's no longer with us.
You should have said yes and gone down to see what happened. Yes, I'm the lawyer.
Jerry and Sylvia used to like employing Australian actors, didn't they? Was there a sense that Australian actors could do an American accent more convincingly than...
No.
No? Well, I hear the Canadian actors are quite good at it as well.
Hey?
Yeah, Canadian.
I hear the Canadians are quite good at it too.
Oh, superlative.
I didn't have a Canadian accent. I was brought
There
up
were
in
many
Detroit,
others
Michigan.
beside Ray who were in. No.
Well, there was an actor called John Tate,
Oh yeah,
who
yeah.
was also
He was a brilliant character, voice actor. I used to work with him on voiceovers and stuff in the 60s. Yeah, John Tate.
And, I mean, he never took a credit on an episode of Thunderbirds, but he was in
Yeah.
quite a few episodes playing
Yeah.
secondary characters.
Yeah.
Another Australian actor was Charles Bud Tingwell.
Yeah, wonderful man.
Very good old Charles.
Yeah, tell us
Emergency
about, he was
Walk.
actually, I mean, I say that Ray Barrett was the biggest star. Bud Tingwell was a big star as well because he'd been in
Emergency War 10.
Emergency War 10.
Well, he was a star of Emergency War 10, yeah.
Oh, there he is on the screen
Yeah,
behind
there he
us.
is, yeah.
There's Charles Tingwell on the
Yes,
right,
yeah.
and that's John Tate on the left with Patrick McGowan in the early 60s.
Oh, yeah.
And many people here will probably know that John Tate's son, Nick, was later in Space 1999, one of the leads in Space
Oh, I didn't know what
1999,
this
which may or may not have been a coincidence.
No, don't remember him.
But yeah, I mean, Bud Tingwell was a big star.
Yeah.
as
I know
well.
the guy beside him.
McGowan.
Good God, is that
That's Patrick McGowan with John Tate.
Right.
In a
with a beard. What?
Yeah, in an ITV play in the
What,
early
Danger
60s.
Man, was it?
That's not Danger Man, no, that's a play, that's a single play from
Oh,
the
I
early
see.
60s. But of course, yes, he was best known as Danger Man.
Yeah, I did an episode of that a long time ago.
Tintin and Grandma were both played by Christine Finn, who's an actress that I don't think any of us really know very much about.
No, not busted.
Does anybody have any? I mean, she was.
So long ago, I remember her vaguely.
Oh, there she is behind us now.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Now, her career was, I think, dare I say it, already nearing its end because she retired, I think, in the early 70s.
What?
Christine.
What, to bring up a family? Or?
I believe so. Well, I think
Yeah.
she had a husband who wasn't very well. I think she had a husband, I believe, who had an accident or something, and so she I think, left the profession for a while in the very early 60s to look after her husband. And I think she came back to do Thunderbirds, I think. But does anybody remember anything about Christine at all? Because she was in, she must have been in almost every episode.
You know, like what?
Yeah, she
What do you
was.
want us to remember?
What was she like?
Well, she was very pleasant, very nice. She had a nice sense of humor. We used to laugh.
Yeah.
She and I used to laugh a lot. No, she was nice. She was very ladylike, very much a lady. I hadn't heard of her until this. I didn't know what. You could never get too much out of Christine. Christine could be very closed to a certain extent, but I mean, I don't even know if she had children. Did she?
I don't
I
know.
don't know.
No, I don't think so. I don't think she did. I knew
She was
her
born in
husband
India,
wasn't
we
well.
know that, and she was very good. I mean, she gave Tintin a kind of
Yeah, she
Malaysian
was
sounding
great,
voice,
yeah.
didn't she? Because
That's
obviously
right.
Carano
Yeah.
was Malaysian,
Yeah,
and
it's only
Tintin
touch,
was his daughter, and she was very good at that voice. The picture on the left is Christine in Quatermass in the Pit, which was one of the big things she did in the late 1950s.
That's right.
And she's another actor who's sadly no longer with us.
No.
Now, in the first series of Thunderbirds, Virgil was not played by Jeremy. Virgil was played by David Holliday. Now, Matt, you knew David well, didn't you?
Very well. We were in West Side Story together from the American production that was over. In fact, I understudied David as Tony in that. And then we did the tour together, and he and I remained friends all that time. And we saw each other an awful lot in the early part of the 60s. And the reason I got the job was because of David. David, they didn't have a Alan the first episode they've used Ray Barrett's voice.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Yes.
We're both right.
Yeah.
And so he suggested me as a voice, and so they arranged for me to go see Sylvia. And I think I've told this story 100 times. I went to see Sylvia.
There is David, by the way.
There's David, yes, lovely David. He was Norwegian, of Norwegian descent. He had the blondest hair I've ever seen on anybody in my life. This was unbelievable. He was absolute charming, great sense of humor, wonderful singer. Couldn't dance worth a tick, but never mind. Anyway, I got in, opened the door, and Sylvia said, "Don't speak," because the doll was standing on her desk. And then I finally sat down, and she said, "Oh my God, if you were blonde and blue-eyed," which he was, "you actually be the dummy," which I thought really was great.
It's a slightly odd way to cast a voice artist, isn't it?
Yes.
When the resemblance to
You
a
look like
puppet.
a dummy, yeah, you look like a puppet. Well, he had the cleft in his shin and all
Right.
that crap, you see.
Right.
So anyway, I spoke and she said, "Oh, that's it." So I got hired right there in this one.
Now, Jeremy, you stepped into David's shoes because
Yeah.
you took over as well. Because I think David got a job on Broadway, maybe, or
David went back to do a show called Coco, based on Coco Chanel on Broadway.
Okay. And so then you got the call from
I just come back from Canada,
right.
and so they needed Canadian, American voices, whatever. And I was very mid-Atlantic, good enough to fit in a bit, you know.
But
I never saw him do it at all. I never saw Holly.
You hadn't even seen Thunderbirds.
No, I hadn't. Never.
Had you seen any of the Andersons
No,
puppet shows?
well, they're kid shows. I didn't watch kid shows.
I'm going to go now. I mean, how much can you take in one interview?
So, do you remember who cast you? Was it Jerry or Sylvia, or was it both of them?
Oh, I think it was both in the final cut, you know, but they accepted me very quickly. I'd done a hell of a lot of radio stuff in Canada and Toronto and television.
Were you born in Canada, or were you?
No, I was born in this country, but I emigrated because I'd worked at the Old Vic,
Right.
where Tony Guthrie worked and directed all the shows. And I knew that he was going to start a new theatre in Canada, in Stratford, Ontario, in Canada, Shakespeare Theatre. So I wrote to him, and he got Cecil, to his assistant, to write back and give me introductions all over Canada. So I went there and got a job straight away, thanks to that. But I went there to work in that new theatre.
Right.
That's
And
what I
did
wanted
you
to do.
ever?
What?
Did you ever?
Yeah, 6 years.
At Stratford?
Yeah.
Oh, what's that? I opened that theatre.
You were in the first year when Chris did Henry V? Ah.
No, the theatre, the new theatre. 67.
Oh, the new one. That was the
Not the tent,
original
not the
thing.
tent.
The original was a tent, yeah, that's
You
right.
were in the tent.
I wasn't. I didn't get there till 1956.
1957, when the theatre opened with Hamlet and Twelfth Night.
Yeah, with Chris Plummer.
I did that, yeah.
We were in the same show.
Hamlet and Twelfth Night.
Yes, I was.
This is all very nice. What were you
I was one of the gypsy players who came on to do the play in the court.
In Hamlet? Oh,
In Hamlet.
were you? Oh.
Yeah, I was the one that played that peculiar instrument which they made
I
for
don't
me.
remember that. And that's,
I did it very well.
how come I didn't know that?
I guess you were kind of a bit, you know.
Oh, yes, I am. Always have been.
We can't have been in that together. Did we?
Yes, I've got the
What do you do at 12th night?
12th night, I beat the drum. I was the drummer boy
I didn't
for
know
him
this.
to sing. When that I was that a little and I understood it between the Jerusalem.
Bruna did it. Oh, yeah, that's right. Bruna did it. So you were there? Oh, you must have been there. How could I have overlooked it?
Gentlemen.
We shut up.
Obviously,
check my program.
I'm going to bring you forward eight years now, back to
Thank
1965.
God for that.
Got it.
Back to 1965. Now, obviously, Thunderbirds was a huge hit in the 1960s, but I presume that, unlike actors who were in other hit shows, you guys presumably were not recognised in the street, were you? Or you weren't?
No.
You weren't publicly associated. I mean, presumably kids didn't come up to you and ask for your autographs because they didn't know who you were.
It happened. It did happen. It happened in restaurants with me, and it happened in department stores where I'd be talking, and the person behind the counter would suddenly go, "Oh my God, you're the voice of Alan Tracy." It did happen.
Right. Did you ever get a discount for that?
Yes. I asked for a discount right away if we ever.
No, there were two Thunderbirds films that the Andersons made, which you were all in, and there was a big premiere for the first one, Thunderbirds Are Go, at the London Pavilion. Did you all attend that?
And the band of the Royal Marines was there playing with Barry Gray's music. It was a wonderful evening. Yeah.
That was the best thing about it. Not the film, the event. I mean.
Oh, the event. Yeah.
I was in a show, so I wasn't there.
You couldn't go. Jeremy, did you go to the premiere?
Yes.
You did? What did you think of the film? Because, I mean, I think it's quite common knowledge that the film, although I think it's excellent, did not do great business, sadly.
I don't know, but I enjoyed it very much. Yeah.
I think basically it was a small screen Thunderbirds and all Jerry's work. I don't think when it was expanded into a full screen, I don't think it worked as well.
On a big screen.
My opinion.
You're right, absolutely right, David.
Yeah. And it didn't, I mean, it didn't do particularly well financially, I don't think.
I think the big screen showed sort of
The mechanics of it.
that's it.
Yeah.
Whereas on the smaller screen, you're not seeing the strings as much. You're not seeing a lot of the explosions are happening. But on the big screen, you suddenly thought, oh, I think they're doing. I don't know. It's just they look like models. On the big screen, they look like models. The small screen, they don't.
Well, in about 5 minutes, we're going to be taking questions from the audience. So if anybody's got any questions they'd like to ask, now's the time. In about 5 minutes, now's the time to start thinking about it.
Oh.
Okay, so I'll come back to you in a few minutes. But first, I'd like to talk to David and Matt. The next question is for David and Matt. Now, you've both recorded voices for the new series, Thunderbirds Are Go.
Oh yes.
Haven't you?
Well, David's in it.
David especially, because David's
Feature
in almost
player,
every
yeah.
episode, aren't you?
Well,
Mark?
they invited me back, and I'm very happy.
Now, my question to you both is that, aside from the computer animation, which they're using now, what do you think are the biggest differences between the new series and the original Thunderbirds? Apart from the technology.
Well, I think the technology is very good. The actual graphics of the Tracy Island and the ships flying, it's just it's absolutely real. I have a problem with the more or less human people in it. I don't find them real. I find the puppets more lifelike than I find the animated characters on the screen. Not all the characters, but mainly. I'm talking about the brothers primarily. I mean, their hair doesn't even move. And I find the way they move, I find their movement is strange. So that's the only problem I have with it. I think some of the stories are great. The stories seem fine, But other than that, that's the only thing that disturbs me. I mean, I do watch them, and it's excellent.
David, what do you think? What do you think are the biggest differences between what they're doing
Well,
now
I
and what
mean,
we did 50 years ago?
basically, the series is faithful to the original series. I mean, you've got Tracy Island, you've got a band of brothers, and you've got a dramatic situation developing, and international rescue comes to the rescue. As Matt said, the special effects are absolutely stunning, and the stories are very, very good. Now, I know a lot of people have a great fondness for the original series, but it's 50 years on, it's 55 years on, and time moves on, technology moves on, and I think if I may say so, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, because the ratings are very high and it's appealing to a whole...
Which, the new one?
Yes.
They're not high.
Well, how do you know?
I've seen, well, have you seen a lineup of what the audience numbers
Well,
are?
I don't want to get into an argument with you over ratings, but I'm told that it is a very popular series.
It's very popular with the children. It's a
Popular with my
children's
children.
series.
I'll tell you that for nothing.
It's a children's series. You know,
Yeah, well-
Thunderbirds was clever. Was the BBC obviously that did it, because they showed it. They showed it in the morning and then they showed it in the evening, and all the adults were rushing home to see Thunderbirds.
Well, I think the original Thunderbirds was so expensive. I think it cost in modern money
It's £100,000 an episode.
800,000.
I don't think so.
In modern money,
Yeah, 800,000. Yeah, I
in
agree.
modern money.
Yeah.
In modern money.
Gee,
And so
what
I
should
think
you
it
have
was. And so that was, I think, one of the most expensive things that
Yeah.
Lou Grade had ever paid for. So I think he was going to make sure it got prime time.
Yeah.
I don't think, having spent that much money, he was going to put it on in the mornings. That's why I think so many people remember Thunderbirds. It's because
Why
it
do you
was on-
say Lou Grade putting it on? He wasn't BBC, was he?
No, originally in the 1960s. I mean, when it was shown by ATV.
It was never shown on ATV.
Yeah, it was Lou Grade's company ATV that paid for Thunderbirds.
Yes, I know, but it was never shown on independent television.
Yes,
Where?
yes, it was.
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
It was repeated on the BBC.
It was, yeah, that's right.
Originally
That's
shown on
right.
ITV.
It was the BBC that repeated it in the 1990s.
I must check the repeats. I don't think we got repeats on that.
In this one?
Anyway, do we have any questions from the audience? Right, there's a chap over here. You think you'd have to grab a microphone?
Hiya. It's very interesting to see the different dynamics with the old and the new. And my biggest criticism with the new, to be honest, apart from David, is the voices of the brothers aren't distinct enough. Sometimes you listen and you think, they do audio describe it, by the way, which is very good, but sometimes you hear and you think, hang on, who the hell's talking next? And I'm sorry, that is a criticism from somebody that can't see, is that when they did the original Thunderbirds, you guys did a marvellous job with the voices and you knew exactly who was talking and when. Just your thoughts on that.
So you say you're a visually impaired viewer, yeah?
Yeah.
So you find it especially confusing, yeah?
Yeah, there's not enough difference. They should have given them more, maybe, of accents between the voices, or just a different dynamic between them. Yeah.
I think there's something very important here, actually, which is that a lot of modern actors don't speak distinctly. And that's because they don't learn to act in the theatre. The BBC has been loaded with complaints by recent, very expensive productions. And the audience are writing and saying, we can't understand what they're saying, they're mumbling.
You're right, Jeremy. The one that I gave up on was Jamaica Inn, I think, last year. Because I couldn't, the lady in front agreed with me.
It wasn't the original, it was a remake.
Oh, a remake, but you couldn't, everything was...
That's right, they're swallowing the words.
And we hear it in Hollywood all the time, don't we? I think they think it's authentic. But I must admit, it's something that I struggle
It's
with.
terrible, and it's because we all learned to act originally in repertory.
To stick up for voice actors, the one episode I did for the Thunderbirds, the new one, the other playing the brothers were there, and I thought they were absolutely fine. The way their voices were very distinct for each individual character. I found nothing wrong with their voices. Did you?
No, I don't know.
I mean, you talk about voice actors. Basically, we're all actors.
That's right.
And when I started, there was one BBC channel, and I spent years in repertory and in theatre, and then I managed to get a lucky break going to the West End with some plays. But we're basically actors who then, when ITV came in, and there was a huge amount of commercials and other programs for children, and that's where people like ourselves who had versatility with accents and voices came into our own. But we pursued parallel careers in the theatre, television, and voice. Yeah, I think that says it all.
Absolutely. Says it all, David.
I think we've got time for one more quick question from the audience. Does anybody have a question? One right at the back, sir.
Thank you very much. It's a question for Shane. I am absolutely mystified and very interested in the promotional material that you did that you wrote for the when Thunderbirds was finally being shown in America. You said that was it just audio work, or was it you did dialogue for the characters? I understand. And was it done with puppets? And does it still exist? Are we ever going to see it?
You know, I never saw them. But they were put out on network or syndication, probably, and they were just advertising this new show coming up. And not being there, I didn't see it. I saw one trial commercial, but that's all. That's what it was like. And so I had some experience in plugging something that was coming up. You call it plugs, but it's just telling you when and how and all the information they can about this series, which nobody knew very much about. So that's all it was. It was just, I think maybe 30-second blurbs. But since I'd done it in Toronto at the CBC, I had a bit of a head start, so that's the way it went. But it took America by storm, and they could hear every word.
Thank you very much.
Well, sadly, we're out of time. I think we could talk much longer, but if anybody wants to check out a copy of Thunderbirds The Vault, it's on sale in the dealer's room. Or people want to chat to these gentlemen further, they are outside signing autographs afterwards, which just leaves me to say a very big thank you to David Graham, Shane Rimmer, Jeremy Wilkens and Matt Zimmerman. Thank you.